Coming to you from the Deep South, this is the Blue Collar Leadership Podcast. High-impact leadership is not reserved for leaders, and it has nothing to do with your position, title, or rank. However, it does have everything to do with your character. It's time to climb to the next level and beyond, personally and professionally. Now, let's start making it happen with your host, Max Story.
Hello, and thanks for listening to the Blue Collar Leadership Podcast. Today we're on episode 452, which is titled, Our World Gets Better When We Get Better. And we're engaged in the Ladder of Influence, Ria's book. The subtitle is The 5 Steps for Climbing to the Next Level and Beyond. So that's what we're all in the middle of right now. We're engaged in going through this 30-plus part series on this book. Today we're focused on chapter 18, which is titled Mastering the Third Step. But again, the title of the episode is Our World Gets Better When We Get Better. Remember, the third step is competency development. We've already covered first step, control of self. Second step is character development. And now we're wrapping up this third step, competency development. Character and competency, they're the two key components for building trust. And when we talk about authentic influence, trust is the foundation of authentic influence. So everything that I've been talking to you about and sharing with you from Ria's book, it's all about how to intentionally and methodically help you develop a high degree of trust, which is going to convert into a high degree of influence. So I want to start off today with a quote from I know I'm gonna get his last name wrong, but I'll give it a shot. His name's Eric Weinmeier, maybe. I'm not sure if I'm saying that right, but he's the first blind guy to ever climb Mount Everest. And yeah, you heard that right. We think we got excuses why we can't do things. This man is blind and climbed Mount Everest. Yes, he had some support. He had a team. He had people helping him, but the man is blind and he climbed Mount Everest. It don't matter how much help you got. There's one spot in there you got to cross they basically, if you've ever seen it on any YouTube channels or videos where they got to cross a big deep ravine in the ice and snow, and they basically got a ladder, aluminum ladder stretched out across there, and you got to walk across that thing, and it's very, very deep. If you fall off, you pretty much done. And yeah, they kind of tie you on or whatever. But I mean, I can't imagine doing that with my eyes open, being able to see, much less being blind. But anyway, this quote I'm about to share with you is from Eric, that guy. And he's got books and he's a motivational speaker and things like that. But he says this right here. Too many people sit around realizing their limitations when maybe they should spend more time realizing their potential. And that's what Ria and I are trying to do, is help you realize your potential. Turn who you could be into who you are. And now that's why we're talking about mastering this third step. Ria says mastery happens daily, not in a day. She says just as planting seeds today won't provide fruit tomorrow, you won't see results after one day or even several days when you focus on mastering this step, competency development. You got to plant the seeds. If you ever go and harvest a crop, you got to plant the seeds. But then you got to do the work. And you got to wait. You do the work and you wait. And you do the work and you wait. Same way with lifting weights or trying to lose weight if you relate it to exercise. It doesn't happen in a day. Transformation doesn't happen in a day. Mastery doesn't happen in a day. Ria also says, be careful which seeds you are planting. Plant growth and development seeds by learning, reading personal growth and leadership books, listening to great podcasts, and developing your skills. She says you don't plant orange seeds and expect an apple tree to grow. Nobody would do that. Just got any kind of sense. You don't plant poor choices and receive positive results in your life. It's a law of nature. Just think about that simple thing right there that Rhea just taught in that one line. And she's referencing planting seeds, so that's why she used the word plant. But if you just take it out, she basically says you don't make poor choices and receive positive results. That's the condensed version. You don't make poor choices and receive positive results. Anybody with any kind of sense can tell you that right there. Anybody with any kind of sense would agree with that right there. Yet, there's a whole lot of us out there in the world. We make poor choices day after day, week after week, month after month, and for many of us, year after year. And somehow we expect things to get better. Yet we continue making poor choices nonstop. You at any moment you can press the reset button. And I got a book to help you do that if you hadn't dove into it yet. It's called 10 Foundational Elements of Intentional Transformation. How to become your best self. If you're looking for personal transformation, you want to try to convert those poor choices you're making into excellent choices, you're going to start getting excellent results. We get exactly out of life what we put into it. Now, people that want to make excuses, they're going to come up with a million excuses why it's somebody else's fault. Somebody somewhere got something to do with what I'm accomplishing or not accomplishing. That's what a lot of people are going to do. Myron Golden says it best, blame is the most popular excuse. Think about that next time you blame somebody. I share that quote a lot because it's a good one. As soon as you're blaming somebody, you're making an excuse. As soon as you hear someone else blaming somebody, you're hearing them making an excuse. Most of us, if we're being blamed, we know the other person's making an excuse. But we miss a lot of times. We miss when we're blaming people. A lot of times people are blaming somebody or something and they don't even realize it. They've made such a habit out of using that excuse of blaming someone else for their circumstances, for their results. We're responsible. We're exactly where we're supposed to be based on every choice we've made leading up to this moment right here. Rhea says, highly effective, successful people realize they need to balance relationships with the need to get results. We want to get results, but highly effective people get results based on great relationships. So we get great results and we have great relationships. When you get those two working together, you got a good life. You got folks looking out for you. You're looking out for them. You're helping them. They're helping you. That's a good life. You're going to get good results. You're going to end up in some really great circumstances. Life's going to be good because you're getting better. And as I've said before, character leverages competency. And remember, as we climb these steps, you can't climb these steps and leave the other steps behind. That's why throughout this series, I'm reminding you of the previous steps. That's why I talk about control of self. I talk about character development. And here I'm talking about, again, character leverages your competency. Your character is going to launch you or limit you. It's going to maximize or minimize your competency. What you do is important. But when it comes to influence, remember, we're talking about climbing the ladder of influence. How you do it is more important. So what you do is important, but how you do it is more important. Because how you do it basically is saying you're still doing it, but the focus is on the how. Some people focus more on what they're doing, and they ain't really focused on how they're doing it. How they're doing it is determined how it's perceived and how it impacts other people. And that's a pretty powerful piece of the puzzle. Rhea says, regardless of your level of success, highly effective influencers know they must treat other people as people rather than objects. And she says that she shares a quote in a book from John Holmes, and she talks about, he said this well when he says, it is well to remember that the entire universe, with one trifling exception, is composed of others. Just think about that. the entire universe, every single thing else outside of ourselves is composed of others. We're just one small, tiny exception in the whole universe. But a lot of people want the world to revolve around them. They think they're that special, that everybody's supposed to cater to them. So don't make the mistake, Rhea says, of thinking anyone else is less important than you. Don't sacrifice long-term relationships to make short-term gains. That's what low-impact people do. They focus on themselves. Therefore, they'll sacrifice relationships long-term so they can get a little short-term gain. Rhea's got a great list right here. It's not necessarily a checklist, but it could be. But it's not the way she wrote it in the book. Like when we talk about applying the step at home or at work each time, she's got an actual checklist in there. But this is more of just something to think about here. She says, here are some things that will stop you from mastering the third step. Make sure you avoid these things. So the other checklists are things you need to do to master the step at home or at work, each one of the steps. But this one is just a little list, things you need to avoid. You got to not do these things if you want to master this third step in life. So I'm going to go through this list with you. Procrastination, putting things off. That's going to derail you. You ain't going to master the third step if you're a procrastinator. You got to make things happen. The next thing on the list, you got to avoid making excuses. Saying things like, I can't because blank. Fill it in. You hear people say that all the time. I can't because. You can't because you ain't willing to do the work or make the sacrifice or invest the time. That's why people can't do things. The excuse is just a lie. They can tell the truth if they want. You say, I can't because I don't want to pay the price. Well, that's the truth. And you ain't going to make it happen. But most people are just making excuses. The next item on our list here, you got to make sure to avoid blaming others. In other words, saying it's not my fault. Remember, we touched on that earlier. I told you about Myron Golden. Blame being the most popular excuse. Make sure you avoid juggling too much because you're going to drop a ball. You might drop all the balls. You get to juggling too much, try to keep up with all of them, you may drop every single one of them. Make sure you avoid saying yes to everything, especially the wrong things. Why would you want to say yes to the wrong things? People do it all the time. They do it all day. They waste their time saying yes to somebody else's important thing. Is maybe irrelevant to you, but yet somehow you find yourself doing all these things that other people want you to do, but you really don't want to be doing them. That means you got some work to do on the inside because you're making bad choices on the outside. She says, make sure you avoid playing it safe. And she's talking about because you're of fear of failure. A lot of people can't get where they want to go because they're afraid of failing. A lot of people ain't even really afraid of failing. They're just afraid of other people seeing them fail. If they could fail in private, they might be okay, but they worried about what other people are thinking. And a lot of times those are the people that'll tell you that they're not worried about what other people think. But they are worried about it, so they play it safe. Rhea says, make sure you avoid exhibiting arrogance, too much pride and ego. And I always say, it's hard to swallow the truth when you got a mouthful of pride and ego. That means arrogant people. You know, some people, if they don't know, you can't tell them. That's a good example of somebody who's arrogant. They don't know, but you can't tell them. Even if you know and they don't, you still can't tell them. They got too much. They got a mouthful of pride and ego, and the truth ain't getting down there. Rhea says, make sure you avoid avoiding change, refusing to adapt. Some people with a high degree of character and competency hold themselves back because they resist change. And if you find yourself resisting change, guess what? Rhea and I got a resource for you on that too. We wrote a book together called Change Happens, Leading Yourself and Others Through Change. We got a 7.5-hour video course on it. There's a podcast series on it. I can't remember the number, but if you go to the Blue Collar Leadership YouTube channel, look through the playlist, you can find the podcast series there under a playlist, so you can find it easy that way. But you got to dive into the resources. That resource is to help you realize how to leverage change to increase your influence. Most people do right the opposite. They allow change to decrease their influence. That's what most people do naturally. So if you can become proactive about leading yourself and others through change, well, when everybody else is doing the wrong thing, you're going to be one of those doing the right thing, and you're going to get the benefit of doing the right thing. Rhea says, avoid running over people to get what you want. Value, and she's talking about valuing results over relationships. As soon as you start valuing results, your results over relationships, you're going to find your influence diminishing. You may get the short-term results that you wanted, but long-term, you're going to pay a price. And you may not ever even realize it. You'll just think that's just the way life is. It may be that way, but it ain't got to be that way. And she says, make sure you avoid trying to skip the first 2 steps on the ladder of influence. She's talking about skipping those character-related steps. That first step, control of self. The second step, character development. And, in this book, in this series, it's just a few chapters on that. But in life, it's unlimited learning relative to control of self and character development. But she says attempting to skip those 2 steps, it's going to cost you. And it's going to cost you a lot. Because of how you're going to be going through life. So I'm going to wrap up today on mastering this 3rd step, the competency development step, with a quote from Hal Elrod. Hal had this to say: until we dedicate time each day to developing ourselves into the person we need to be to create the life we want, success is always going to be a struggle to attain. How about that? Until we dedicate time each day to developing ourselves into the person we need to be to create the life we want, success is always going to be a struggle to attain. You ain't going to attain it. You're going to just keep struggling. That's what he's talking about. Until we dedicate time each day. That's another way of saying become intentional. And you're doing that. You're listening to this series. That's one way you're doing it. It can't be the only way. You got to do more than listen to this stuff. You're learning about all of this personal growth and leadership development as you listen. You got to figure out in your life, how do you intentionally and methodically start applying these principles? And one way to do it is you got to just keep that information coming in. You got to listen to podcasts. You got to read books. You got to take video courses. You got to teach. Nothing's going to accelerate your journey like teaching, facilitating book studies at home or at work. Teaching content, reviewing content, this type content with other people. Because you're going to have to elevate yourself and prepare at a different level to step up in front of people, especially if you start teaching them about character. You start teaching, a lot of people won't teach people about character because they know they're not living up to those standards. And they don't really want to change who they are. And they don't really want to be two-faced and get up and teach a lot of stuff. Teach people how to see how they're really not being, how they ought to be. It gets kind of tricky. And a lot of people want to just withdraw. So they never really get to go learn because they ain't willing to teach. You really want to learn something? You start teaching it to other people. And again, you can start at home with teenagers or even younger children. All kind of lessons that you can learn relative to character and competency that you can start teaching other people, helping them excel in life. And it's going to cause you to excel. And you might learn something from some of those people. Everybody's got something to teach us. All right. We're wrapping up the third step today, talking about mastering the third step from Ria's book, The Ladder of Influence. Hope you enjoyed today's podcast. Talk to you next time.
Make it happen or someone else will. It might as well be you. Are you serious about taking your career and your life to the next level and beyond? Check out Mac Story's Blue Collar Leadership series books and others, now available on audio, along with paperback and ebooks at Amazon and Audible. Please visit bluecollarleadership.com to learn about Mac's books, programs, special offers, and more. Thank you for listening to the Blue Collar Leadership Podcast.